And we're back, and that means it's time to continue our grading of 10th edition, year 2. All right, so we're going to pick up where we left off, and we're on to the next item, which is new player accessibility. Is the game easy to get into for new players? And this one, our lowest score was Dennis with a D. Our highest score was Kevin with a B. Richard came in at a D+, and I came in at a C+. So, Kevin, justify your existence with the B.
I don't remember. It's what I scored last year. No, no, honestly, like it is. That's what I scored last year. I don't remember specifically the arguments I made, but in my opinion, like we talked about, like the rules accessibility, which I think is a slightly different piece of this. But I think for like new player accessibility, it's kind of we're in the same spot we were last year. There's probably better combat patrols now than there were last year, because I know a couple of them have been refreshed and a couple of them are better. There's more Grotmus detachment rules available for free, so there's more ability to play more armies as like just a pick up and kind of get into the game, and not have to deep dive into some of the more complicated corners of the game as a new player. So, if I were pitching this to a, hypothetical person off the street to be like, okay, what do you know about 40K? Oh, I like Space Marines. Cool. Let's pick up a combat patrol, play it as Death Watch, use the free codex, and that's it. Like, you don't really need much else. So and then I think as we talked about before with the core rules and the edition of the game, I think this is the easiest edition to play, and I think it's the easiest edition to learn. So I think there are ways to get in as a new player, assuming you can get over the $140 price point for a combat patrol, which is not something that people can, most people can't just casually drop $150, $200, $300, whatever, to buy a new army, which is why it's not like a super high score. But I think for I hate using this phrase, but a luxury hobby, that this is, I think they've tried to gear it towards new players, and making it where it's at least easy to get in. And then as all the other things we're talking about, as you get more into it, then you start running into the complications of digital rules and detachments and FAQs and stuff like that. But if you're just trying to pick up dice and play, I think it's not the worst thing to get into, not the hardest thing to get into.
And Kevin, you hinted on why I dropped it as far as I did.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually run into people at friendly local game stores who were looking to try and get into this because of either like Secret Level, Space Marine 2,
yep,
Rogue Trader. And they were excited, but then they see all the product. They're like, I don't even know where to start. And they were looking for help. They're asking for help. And like one of the stores, they do have those start collecting boxes, not the combat patrols type, but the original, like, here's some Space Marines for the start of the edition. But those are like on a back shelf hidden away because nobody buys them, because most of the people who play the game already know. And then part 2 of that is they were looking at the box sets because they felt that gave them more of a variety of things rather than just one unit.
Mm-hmm.
And their jaws dropped at the price. They're like, this is this much money? I could get a video game or two for this.
Yeah.
So I think the harder thing in getting new players in is getting them past that initial investment. Especially when we're going out to like Amazon and all the video games, whatever they come out with, like I said, the Amazon TV shows, those will drive more people to the hobby to at least check it out.
Yeah, for sure. No, and that's the thing that we've constantly talked about for probably a decade at this point, that like the starting point to get into the game needs to be at or around video game cost. And when combat patrols were $90, $100, you can make that argument. Now that combat patrols are $140, $160, that becomes a bigger impediment. But also, I think you're going to start seeing video game prices go up too. So, no, obviously the need for a cheaper introductory product is still there. And Combat Patrol kind of isn't it because kind of player good.
Well, and not just cheaper, but a points to go here first.
Yes.
I think a lot of people need that.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
Yeah, I think the biggest things for me that led to a C+, which was the same score I gave it last year, was the price of entry. I think getting people, like teaching people the game is absolutely easier.
Yep.
It is probably the easiest edition to teach than it ever has been, and I think people who are drawn to it find it quick to learn, but it is getting over that hump. And I don't think Combat Patrol is, I think between the price increases and I'm not going to ding the Combat Patrols because, oh, well, they don't have the big centerpiece model anymore. Like most of them don't. And I miss those, but I get the impression they're probably better balanced now that they are primarily infantry.
Yeah, honestly, I think the new Combat Patrols are better than the old ones, just for like what you get in the box and like what's going to be usable and, you know, the potential to double up and do things like that. So, I kind of agree with that on the Combat Patrols. But also, I don't think Combat Patrol's a great entry point into the game, or not as good an entry point as it should be, like what Spearhead is for Sigmar. Spearhead's
right.
Awesome.
I think Spearhead, first off, Spearhead is an actively support. I mean, yes, Combat Patrol is actively supported because we're seeing new Combat Patrols in White Dwarf. Every Codex has a new Combat Patrol in it, except for Chaos Knights. We don't know about Imperial Knights, but we know they did like special kind of Combat Patrols for them that were like, here's a trio of Armigers, or a pair. It's not even a trio. Here's a pair of Armigers running around, or a pair of War Dogs running around with a fixed war gear setup. Whereas, the Spearhead, they've done they're on their second season of Spearhead now. Like, it's actually seasonal. Like they change up the board, they change up the missions, they release new Spearheads. They've kept the price on the Spearheads at $145 as opposed to the $168, which that, it's $23 difference, but that's a noticeable difference. Like if somebody's looking at, I want to get into one of these games, and they see one that costs $168 and is only kind of sort of supported, and they see one at $145 that has very active support and an active community that enjoys playing it, I can tell you which one they're going to go for. And it's not going to be $40K. So the cost of models, we need to see, and I don't know how viable this is for them as a company, but I would love to see more like Lost Leader style products to get people in. And the intro sets they have for, starting here, like the ultimate starter sets, or like the 40K starter set for 2 players is $112 and starts off with a decent chunk of Tyranids and 11 Space Marines, because they leaned hard into the Terminators in the Leviathan box, and so that's what we're kind of stuck with. And like, it's not bad. It also doesn't come with any terrain, or they do have one that comes with terrain. That's the ultimate starter set, and that is $210, and that's a hard, it has a few more models, but like, that's still a hard selling point to get somebody into the game, especially because that implies you need to have two people getting into the game. Yeah, the new Combat Patrol Salamanders that is up for pre-order is $170.
Oh my!
And that's selling that to somebody who is looking to get into a game where, like, okay, the people in my store aren't playing Combat Patrol; they're playing like 1,000, 2,000 point games.
Right?
Yeah, we need more support for smaller formats. 1,000 point support in the mission deck is a good start. Combat Patrol needs more active support. It needs to have that kind of seasonal play as well. And I think Kill Team's the intro product, honestly, now. Because Kill Team is the product where you can download the rules for free, or they have relatively inexpensive starter boxes. In fact, I think they just announced a new starter. Let's see, there's a cheaper starter set. There's the starter set they came out with the Death Guard and Space Marines that I really like, because it includes like hard cardboard, like hard cardstock terrain, and it has like all the basics, but it's like not all the rules, but it's enough to play that and kind of get you up to speed. There's apparently a cheaper one coming out that is not going to have as many models in it, but is going to be somewhat cheaper. Even like the price point on there is still like $60 to $80 depending on which kill team you buy, which is a lot.
Yeah.
For a single unit, but considering that's what you buy that and you have your army. Like that's your army for the game because it's a skirmish style game. And a lot of those double as 40k units that people will buy for 40k. And when they rotate out of kill team, and that's the other issue, is that kill team has rotation, but at least the units will still be available for 40k. I think that's your intro product now is kill team, which is kind of unfortunate because it's a wildly different game than 40k. So
Right.
That's my only real problem with Kill Team is the rules are so different.
But combat patrols are ranging 168 to 170. Like that's like anything newer than, let's see, Emperor's Children is 170. That might be the oldest one that's at 170. Everything from Eldari or Astra Militarum and Eldari onward, it's 170. All the older ones are 168. $2 difference.
Eldar ruin everything for everybody.
The entry point for the game is not good.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest problem that it has, because it is easy to get new players who can get their hands on the models or 3D print or buy it second or third hand. A lot of players I'm seeing are that, or they're players who have the disposable income to be able to get into it. So it is kind of an exclusive luxury hobby at this point, which I don't think it was as much when we first started. It was harder to learn. It was a much more difficult game to learn when we started, but it was easier to get into price-wise.
Yeah, they had those Armageddon boxes.
Yeah, the Apocalypse boxes, the Start Collecting boxes. Blackreach is still the gold standard for starter boxes for us. I mean, so... I think it's pretty much covered why we've got B's and C's and D's on this one. So we average out to about a C. From our other submitters, I will say I see a marked difference between our Patreon patrons who submitted, who were mostly in the same places as we were, C's, B's, and D's, and my players from the store who are mostly newer players. They gave it A's and B's.
Well, so that's a positive sign. A minus, B, A minus. Yeah, they have enjoyed learning the game. They do feel that it's a good game to get into. So that does spark up this. There's appeal here for new players. It's just the cost is the getting over that initial investment hump.
Yep.
And that's exactly why I scored it the way I did. Because like I said, $170 is too much for entry into the game. But I think that once you've overcome that hurdle and acquire models from somebody or print or do whatever, I think the game has a lot of, I think it's easy for new players to come in and enjoy. So.
All right, moving on. Next one, execution of new ideas. How have things like objective control, battle shock, leaders and bodyguards worked? Are they working as intended? This one, we came in much more positive. With A's and B's across the board. Dennis and Kevin, you both gave it A's. I gave it a B+. Richard, you gave it a B-. That's actually the lowest that we gave it. Which actually that B- is better than you gave it last year. Last year you gave it a C.
Yeah. I think that overall, I've come to understand a lot of what they've done with it. I still feel that certain aspects of Battle Shock is a little... There's potential for it to be a lot better than it is. And it's not used as a... It could be done more with in the design space.
I won't disagree there. I think there's definitely armies that could lean into it. It's really frustrating when you see armies that will have an enhancement or a stratagem that triggers battle shock, but then there's nothing in the army that plays around with it. The nothing that otherwise triggers battle shock or applies leadership penalties or anything like that. It's like there's more here. And it's also got that weird thing where depending on when Battle Shock gets applied, it may do nothing other than, well, it denies them using stratagems for a turn.
Right, exactly.
That can be devastating as someone who ends up getting Battle Shocked a lot.
Yeah, you have the worst luck with Battle Shock.
Well, not just that. I also play against Tyranid or Nurgle who just, Tyranid, here's Shadows of the Warp. Or Nurgle, hey, I'm going to make you take a Battle Shock test because you're close. Okay, now take some Mortal Wounds. And it's just like,
I've definitely lost games because of Battle Shock. And there have been games where it's like, okay, I have to pass Battle Shock, or like I have to pass a Battle Shock test, or I can't score this objective and I lose the game. Usually like near the end of the game. So it's like it does definitely have an impact, but I think there's definitely armies that could lean in. There's more stuff that could lean into that design space. I totally agree.
And Rob, I'm going to toss this out. Grimnir is the best character ever. He can just say, nope, you're not Battle Shocked anymore.
Well, that's why, chaplains are the same way. Chaplains are fantastic.
Yeah.
I think for me, I like the way Battle Shock works. I think it has been the bestest replacement to Fear, which we all like laughed at for how many editions? I think we lost count. But no, I like the way it works. I like the way OC works because it gives you a chance of, like yesterday when we were doing a big team game of the Grey Knights I was using, because I was using them from Imperial Agents. That's 15 OC. My opponents also knew this and screened me off so I couldn't get to any of their objectives. But just having that threat of here's something that can land, move onto a point and take it over is a threat. So I like that it kind of guides some of the decisions people make on the battlefield. And then as for like leaders and bodyguards, I think we had some issues learning it and how keywords transfer between both halves of the attached unit and all that. But I think we've become accustomed enough to it now that I think it works, especially since we understand it.
Yeah. I think I gave it a B+. It's one of these, I think there's still a few places where it gets hung up. Like, there's still oddities on who can be attached to certain units and who can't. I think we definitely saw that with like the Votann army, where like the Votann Codex, where it's like you've got two detachments where there are no characters that can attach to the units in play. Like, there are no characters who can attach to Chthonian Berserks. There are no characters who can attach.
Okay, to be fair, that's because the model line is very small still.
Yeah, but it also, like, even Space Marines, there's sometimes some weird interactions, or then you've got the case of like lieutenants or ancients where it's like, okay, you can attach one of these to a unit if there's a captain, but you can't have like a lieutenant and an ancient together. You can only have like a captain and an ancient, or a captain and a lieutenant. That there's also just the fact that nobody can join Flawless Blades except for Lucius, like that, in Emperor's Children. There's there's weird cases.
Small unit or small model line.
Yeah. Well, but it's just, again, there's other cases of that where it's like, it's not as, it still feels more restrictive than it should. It's definitely better after they, like, when Sisters came out, they fixed that canonesses could attach to more things. Like that definitely, when they added like the canonist with the jump pack who could attach to Seraphim and Zephyrim, like stuff like that. They've definitely made some improvements there, and that's like my biggest complaint. And then the other complaint, I kind of mentioned it in core rules in part 1, where I wish there was more than just sustained hits, lethal hits, devastating wounds. Yeah. It's like everything is a combination of those three mechanics for the most part.
I think that's mostly because they've learned these are the most consistent and easy and people understand it. And then, like you said, it works. Let's run with it.
Yeah. They do work. It just, it feels like, man, there'd be nice if there were a couple more. And we're starting to see some units where they introduce, like, here's a special one, like the Overcharge, like the Super Hazardous for the Arcanist Evaluator. Like there are a few one-offs.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I would, I would take that exact same argument and put it in the column for my A score, because like those 3 abilities did not exist prior to this edition, and they have been like fully incorporated into the game. They work well. They provide bonuses. Like they do. Everyone understands what they do. So like I think that's a perfect example of how they've incorporated, those abilities into the game and made it a core part of the game now, where if they tried to remove those, like people would complain. So I think that's a sign that they've incorporated them into the game very well. And then I think other things like they've been improving Battle Shock and, putting more detachments, more unit abilities, more rules that engage with that. They've been more consistent about how they give out abilities like the sticky objectives and things like that. Like they've given more of those out. They've given more detachments and more rules that kind of work with these new tools that they've given out in this edition. And I think that's why my score went up, because as we've seen more design, more codexes, more detachments, you can see the flexibility in the core system that they have, which is what they were touting. They're like, oh, this is going to allow us to do a lot more things. In some cases, yeah, they haven't necessarily gone as far as I would like them to, but I think it really shows that they've built the changes they made to the core game, give them a framework that they can build off of going forward and do, implement these new ideas and things like that. And you start to see that with more like anti-monster, anti-vehicle stuff that comes out there to deal with the fact that vehicles are still a little bit overpowered in this edition. So yeah, I think in general it's going the way they intended it to go when they designed it this way. My hope is they don't chuck it all in the bin for 11th edition.
Okay, and I will toss this. You made me think of it. Devastating wound, sustained hit, lethal hits, all those. I mean, it's nice having keywords for them so we can see it. And they might be copy pasted amongst different armies, but at least you see them, you know what they are. Unlike, I guess, previous editions where each faction had its own version of Deep Strike called something differently. But
I
please don't go back to that.
Having universal special rules is definitely the way to go. I would love to have a like just a 1 or 2 more available just to expand the design space a little bit.
I much prefer this to what we had in 8th, 9th edition, where there were no universal special rules, or what we had in 6th and 7th, where there was a 30-page index of special rules. Like the fact that this is somewhere in the middle is the right choice.
I thought it was only like 15 pages.
It was a lot.
Which is why I'm not like, let's go back to the old days. I'm just like, I would like to have 1 or 2 more things,
just a reasonable amount of special rules.
Yeah. So yeah, we average out to an A-. I think this is definitely one of the areas where we think the game they've done pretty well. So really, for like mechanically, it feels like they have delivered on the promises of 10th edition so far. I would say, the game, how the game works. I would say I will have one complaint about OC. I think OC functions pretty well overall. I just wish there was one standard wording for sticky objectives. That's one that could be keyworded.
I will agree with that one.
Like if they sticky that so that they all work the same, and when they changed the wording with, I think it was Astra Militarum was when they changed them. Just, okay, we're changing the wording for this. Boom. Everybody now works the same way.
Just make it a keyword.
If only there was like a quarterly update they did with FAQs where they could standardize all of that across the board. Weird. Maybe they should look into that for the next edition.
We'll be talking about that.
I think for Rob's point, I would rather see it be a keyword rather than, because then you don't have to worry about quarterly update. You're just like,
sure,
okay,
but
well.
you could FAQ it and be like, this is now a keyword. All of these units gain this keyword. See keyword. Like you could do that in an FAQ.
Yeah, but then we
get into rules accessibility, and that's
yes.
so damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
But like that's one where it's like, I think if they had, especially doing a halfway through the edition rules change, and again we were so confused about how the new sticky wording worked, and there's that one Chaos Knight stratagem that works the way we think it should work, even though we know that's not how it does work. but the Chaos Knight one does work that way, and it's awesome. And yeah. As far as our other submitters, A's and B's primarily, there was a C+. and a B-, which ended up dragging the average down to a B+, but that's not far off from our A-. So overall, the mechanics, the new mechanics that have been introduced, seem decently well adopted. Moving on to Codex Quality, and here we had a 50-50 split. We had Kevin and Dennis, you gave it B+. Richard and I gave it C+. And this is Codex Quality. How well written are codexes? Is quality consistent? And do they feel like they would last an edition or more? I'm going to address that last one there. They don't even last an edition without getting changed in many cases.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why it doesn't have an A. For me.
But like, here's the thing: my codexes are good, so I don't care about yours.
For now, until they change the army rule.
Well, yeah, then I'll bitch and moan. Then I will bitch and moan at that point.
So I'll say for the high side that we put is, I think the codexes are great because they have the lore. They have the snapshot pictures of the armies. They have painting guides. They have everything I'd want to if I'm getting into the army. As for the rules section, I think we've hinted at that ahead of time I think we've hit it on the head of what I would love to see is have you can print the army rules here, but the fact that they're going to get changed and not be valid anymore, just use this for reference, but have them free online in your app and have like the generic detachment, like the first detachment free in the app. That way other people that are just interested in playing for a base, here's my base Votann army. I'd get the Need Guard detachment, get the units, I could play it. But if I wanted to get to the other styles, like the Berserk, the Delve detachment, I'd need to get the Codex to unlock those in the app, and I'd get all this lore and other things to read more about the army. So I think that could be a way of having like the best of both worlds, but you're right. The rules, I mean, that's why I don't like the data cards anymore, like the index cards we got with those, because one FAQ later, those aren't valid. At least with a codex, I still get my lore, my painting guides, pictures, so I can like look at like, oh, maybe this would be a cool thing. And
maybe,
so I think
maybe the data cards could also come with a code.
Yeah.
So you could buy those instead.
Oh God, no! I don't like that for one reason, Richard. I've seen them keep codexes in stock better than they have data cards.
Yes.
That is true. That is very true. But at this point, data cards are a limited kind of run product that they make a certain amount, release it, and then it's done and it's gone.
Yes.
Whereas the codex are evergreen and they just keep producing them. I feel it should be the other way around.
Yeah.
Like, you make that codex, the splat book with the fluff and everything, produce it more than you produce the cards. That's for sure. But, like, that could be actually a limited run product. But then the cards, you just keep producing.
That would go a long way towards new player accessibility too. It's like, okay, you want to play this? You want to play this detachment? Buy this combat patrol. Buy that pack of cards.
Yeah,
that's your starting point.
Yeah,
and you'll have all your rules unlocked. And yeah, you won't necessarily get all the fluff, but fluff's available. Like after a time, all that fluff is going to be rewritten onto like all the various wiki sites. Like you'll have access to it all.
And the other thing too is that you can be like, okay, put an extra card in the back of the Votann deck that's like, hey, if you want to learn more about the Leagues of Votann history, here's a list of books. Here's a list of Black Library novels to go read.
Joke's on you. There's only one Votann library.
So far.
And it just came out.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. It's like you have other methods of getting that out there. Hey, you want to learn more about Ultramarines? Go read the Marnies Calgar Marvel comic book, or go read this. Or like, that's the thing. Is like you have these other ways of doing it. Hey, you want to learn more about Space Marines? We have a video game called Space Marine 2. Like,
what happened to Space Marine 1?
Well, there's also that one, but it's like a decade old. But like, no, like you could use it to cross promote other areas of the company and get money that way too. Like,
no, hearing that, I like your idea, Richard, that if they could pull that off, because yeah, as Rob said, buy a box, buy the cards, you're good to go. Yeah, as long as the boxes weren't as expensive as they are now.
because I'm gonna throw this out there as an example. Star Wars Legion, which is the Star Wars tabletop war game, is getting new like starter product released. And their starter sets are like, I think $90, or they're $100, like the new starter sets. And then beyond that, there are like decks of cards. Like you want to know like all the units for your army. And let's say I want to play Galactic Empire is the first one they list. So it comes out. Okay, so the new sets come out like September 19th. But the new starter sets, it contains a 600 point army, which is enough to play like their combat patrol or slightly higher version. And you get all the cards you need for playing those units. And then beyond that, you can buy like, you'll be able to buy decks. So like here is all the rebel units and all the upgrades and everything just in one deck. And
actually,
that's
I'm looking at the Atomic Mass website, Mass Games website right now, and I'm looking at one of the starter boxes, and then right below that they have, hey, these are the 3 unique cards that are only in this box, just right here for you to look at. So even if there are like exclusive cards in those starter sets, they also put them up on the website where you can just like get the information. So,
and so like, okay, I want to play Rebel Alliance. Here's the unit card pack. And here's all 46, and there's a list of, here's the 46 unit cards including duplicates for, having multiple units listed. And here's the 145 upgrades that are included as well for those units. And the pre-order price for that deck is $27.
Yeah.
Okay, so a little more expensive than the index decks.
But not by much.
Not by much.
And a lot more cards.
Yeah.
Because there's almost 200 cards in that deck.
Actually, wait, no, that's probably about the same price as like the Space Marine was, which the Space Marine one was a lot of cards.
That was more than 20. That was, that was more than, that index card box was more than,
I thought it was 30.
I don't think so. The War Scroll cards for, the data sheet cards for Leagues of Votann was $35. So
I thought they were 20. Wow.
No, they were, and the Space Marine one was like 40, I think.
I mean, I liked the cards originally, but they just went out of print, or not out of print, but I mean, the information on them was out of date too fast.
Yeah. Granted, not exactly apples to apples, but the Kill Team Legionaries, so data cards, so the Space Marine Legionaries Kill Team card is $33. So no, the Space Marine one was was over 40. I'm like, that was like, if you found it for $27, that's a steal.
No, I didn't. I didn't. I just am misremembering because it's been too a while.
Like, I remember that being expensive.
And also I do remember, I think I paid in between $300 and $400 because I bought almost all the factions worth of them.
Yeah. And also to throw that comparison of Star Wars Legion to 40K, those like the starter sets, these $100 starter sets contain like 5 units, and the newer Star Wars stuff is all on sprue. It's not like the pre-built kind of board gamey plastic. It's actual like injection molded plastic that you assemble yourself. It also includes all the dice and measurement tools and tokens you need too.
Oh, do they have like the whippy sticks?
They have like little bendy, like hinged things for doing turns.
They have the little triangle thing that instead of having units of measurement on it, have abstract concepts of measurement.
Oh gosh, I hate that.
No, it actually they're numbered.
No,
and everything.
Yeah, they're good.
But I'm just that kind of gets into new player accessibility, but also like Codex is like it's far more accessible to buy this and just buy cards than it is to buy a Codex. And then if they do yearly updates, Atomic Mass Games and Fantasy Flight before them, they'll do like, oh yeah, by the way, new year, here's all the units that have been added or updated. And you buy like, here's the 2026 update deck. Here's the 2027 update deck. And it covers, like, maybe you split out by faction, maybe you don't. But yeah, codexes for 40K do not feel like they have that kind of longevity.
No, the lore I think does, the painting things does, but the rules no.
And I also don't think the codexes are as lore-wise or even as good as the past codexes. I feel like I get less lore in these for the most part.
Oh, on the Atomic Mass Games website, there's also PDFs of all the unit cards that you can just download and print yourself.
Yep.
Which I just
that's because they to be fair, that's because they did a 2.0 relaunch without any new models coming out or being reboxed. So like, well, we got to get it out in front of people somehow. So,
but still, that's a thing they could do. Yeah.
No, well, that's akin to when they did all the indexes for 10th edition. I'm not going to necessarily give them points for that, especially because it was very confusing for Star Wars Legion players apparently when they did that. Also, like, is quality consistent between codexes? No, we've definitely said there feels like there are codexes that are A team and B team.
I
think they're better than they have been.
Yeah, I bumped this up a little bit because I think the newer codexes feel like it feels like they've hit their stride a little bit more on the design and that it's more consistent. And I think the ones that are at least of the newer ones that have come out in the past year, the ones that are lower tier mostly because they still have fewer models and like they just don't have the options that some of the other armies have, which I don't know is necessarily a codex thing as much as release more models for some of these factions.
Right. I definitely feel like my biggest problem, I still gave it a C+. I think on the whole, they're generally pretty good. And it is mostly older codexes. But like when I say older, like I don't mean that much older. Because Gene Stealer Cults was released after or around this time of our last grade. Yeah. They rewrote the army rule for Gene Stealer Cults. They did a complete rewrite of it. Tau were not that much older. They've had a complete army rewrite. Mechanicus, which was an early codex. Well, oh boy, and that is a massive rewrite.
And their codex quality is better now. So
yes, it is.
A for effort.
Sisters came out around the same time as Gene Stealer Cults. Their army rule got tanked and then modified and then kind of unnerfed somewhat. Custodes had their army rule changed.
Right. I think, like Kevin said early on, I don't think they had their stride, but they had a vision, but it wasn't really working. And I think they've tweaked with all the balances. Now they're like, oh yeah, this is how we're going to do things. And I mean, Eldar got a full rewrite, but theirs was from index to codex.
Yeah.
Votann got a full rewrite. So I think they wanted to do full rewrites for a lot of people, but some of them already had codexes, so they couldn't. So they had to like jam it in an update.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wish I could give it a better score. I think the code, like the rules mostly work, although again, the rules, like buying a codex is not a guarantee that book is going to be playable even for an edition. And I think that is a massive failure.
And that puts a cap on it, on the score for me, because like no matter how good this codex is, in 3 to 6 months it could get completely FAQ'd, or in a year a new edition drops and it just gets wiped out of existence.
And so I think for me, I'm now only buying codexes for the factions that I'm definitely going to be playing in the next few months. Other than that, like in previous editions, I bought every codex. It's like,
oh yeah.
I mean, but
even if I didn't play it, I'd buy it. Just to have it.
I didn't buy. No, I think you bought every single one. I bought the majority.
I was also an active tournament organizer at the time, so it was important for me to have all that.
Yeah.
Our other submitters a little harsher, I think, than we are. C minuses, D's, 1 A minus, 1 F, just a straight up failure. Which everything averages out to a C, so definitely not seen as the high point. In fact, I think that's one of that and rules accessibility were the lowest scores from our other submitters. So, yeah, codexes need to be. It feels like there either needs to be more playtesting or maybe have more of them come out around. I think the phased release of codexes is not doing them any favors either.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a matter of power creep, but just vision of edition changes and
as they determine what works.
Yeah, and it's hard to sell somebody a $60 beta test book. because that's basically what it feels like they are.
I mean, a solution is put all the rules digitally online and have them be updated, and have codexes be like Imperial Armor stuff where you just get all the lore and fluff and things. Yay!
Yep.
Yeah.
I feel like I keep saying this every edition
or
every episode.
Or Richard's solution of having a cheap set of cards you can buy that just unlocks it digitally. If they want to do both, come up with a cheaper entry point. So you don't feel like you've spent as much. And if the army rules change, that's a card that changes rather than your entire book.
Yeah.
Like you can print out a new card. Atomic Mass has done that for Marvel Crisis Protocol. So it's doable, but it's harder to sell for a whole book. And we're not doing the old chapter approved thing where you cut this part out and paste it into your codex. All right, moving on. We've got 3 more to go. Faction balance. Are armies balanced against one another as well as within codexes? We mostly came in at Bs. Richard's lowest at B-, which is still pretty close. Kevin, you came in at an A-. Upon reflection, I might, just because of the last few months, I might ding mine down to a B-, possibly even a C+, because Death Guard and Knights have been doing terrible things competitively. To the point where I was checking out Goonhammer's, like, their competitive innovations in 10th. Especially because apparently there was an event, the Lone Star Open, where the third place player brought an extra Hellbrute and didn't put it on his list.
Ooh. Yeah,
and so he ended up having to drop the event. But I was looking at the listings, and every single time Death Guard is mentioned, archetype, nerf this sick filth. Death Guard took 1st, 2nd, and 4th at, not counting the player who got dropped. So this is shifted up from that, but 1st, 2nd, and 4th at Lone Star Open, and 8th, and 9th, and 11th, and 16th. Also, Imperial Knights won at a different event, and they also said, nerf this sick filth. Every time Death Guard or Imperial Knights comes up, it's just like, no, these armies are overpowered and not fun to play against. So, Editor Rob here. Around 2 to 3 days after we recorded this, Games Workshop did release a balance update, points-wise, to address the issues with Death Guard and both Imperial and Chaos Knights. They said they were originally going to release these next month with the quarterly balance update, but seeing as those armies were currently running roughshod and needed to be fixed sooner rather than later, they moved that points release up a month. So I will say my original grade stands. They did actually address the issue, even if in the case of Death Guard, they didn't address it as quickly as they could have.
Yeah, and I know, and I think I put it in my comment, I think they're doing a good job. My dings on them is sometimes they take too long to fix a problem, especially if it's a new codex that came out. And I'm going to put Imperial Knights kind of with that because they changed them when they changed Chaos Knights.
Yep.
And I think we said at the time with Chaos Knights are too powerful. They're undercosted or overpowered, one of the two. They either need to jump the points up or do something else, because giving them more wounds, I still thought was a problem. It still is a problem. But I do like the toughness drop, but they didn't need a trade-off. They just needed to be nerfed a little.
Right.
I like that they're putting more actually, no, that's anti-monster I gain, not anti-vehicle. But still, I think they listen and they look at their metrics and they try to balance things. And I think for the most part, they do a good job. But I do admit sometimes they're a little slow at rebalancing things, or sometimes they come in a little too harsh, like with Sisters, where they could just like tweak one thing and it'd probably be fine, but they tweak a lot of things and just tank the faction.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was the main reason for my B-, I think, was that they've had a tendency to overcorrect on powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Eldar Wraith Knights are still feeling that overcorrection problem for 2 editions now.
Yeah, it's like, I think on the whole, I really do think if you take like the most recent egregious example, which I would say is Death Guard, and I think we all agreed that when like what they had in the Chaos Knights Codex wasn't bad, but then they came in with those massive point drops like right
Yes,
afterwards. And
why?
you're like, no, that was the mistake. That was absolutely a mistake. And the fixes go back to the Codex points. Like that would go a long
or raise
long
from
way.
the Codex points is probably what needs to happen. Because those I thought were too low.
But Death Guard we were seeing Death Guard as a problem back in May. And I understand, it's like, okay, the Codex was pretty fresh when the June data slate came out, but there's been no movement on it since that, and there's been a lot of data now that it's a problem.
Well, like I said, that was a Codex that just came out, so yeah.
Yeah. So September, I imagine we'll see some big Death Guard changes to try to bring that back down. And this gets into ongoing competitive maintenance, but what I want to say is like faction balance, other than a couple of recent outliers, they had things pretty good. We were seeing a good mix of who wins, who loses at events, and it wasn't always the new hotness. Power creep wasn't generally too big of an issue, especially when we get to ongoing competitive maintenance.
Although
like they were
Imperial Agents is still at the bottom of the list. I mean, I think they might need some help.
Imperial Agents, sure. That gets to Codex Quality, and that's just we were down on that one when it came out.
Yeah,
so.
that one's bad.
That one was kind of that's just a weird outlier, but I think currently faction balance at this very moment not great with those 2 or 3 armies in the mix, but it's not quite as oppressive. I mean, actually, it might be getting near as oppressive as Eldari was.
No, it's not there, but it's close. Yeah,
yeah. So, I think overall, if you don't play against those couple armies, it's pretty solid. It's not where it needs to be yet. It could be better. And our other submitters, so we averaged out to a B. Our other submitters averaged out to a C+. No big spikes there. It's all ranges of C, like C- to B+ across the board. So it averaged out to a C+. Definitely could be better. As far as ongoing competitive maintenance, how well has GW addressed issues to rebalance the game as needed? We mostly gave this B's. Richard, you gave it a B+. Kevin and you and I gave it B's. Dennis, you gave it an A-. You still feeling that A- after that?
I am, because I think they're doing a great job, except for when a new codex comes out, they tend to say, oh, well, we need more data. And if that codex comes out right after a data slate hit, then it's going to be there for 3 months. But I do think they're watching, they're trying, and they're trying not to put in emergency things. But the fact that they're going after it, and once they do the balance, it tends to work. But yeah, I did mention in our previous thing, the Sisters was a overcorrection, but you can see they're trying, and I like that they're actually engaging with the community and trying to make a better game.
And I agree. And looking at our last year's scores, we came in at pretty much the same spots as we are now. So I think I do agree. I think they've generally done a pretty good job at trying to stay on top of it. It's definitely, for anyone who's a new player and does not know, back in the day, you could wait for years to get errata or FAQs on a codex. These were when they were releasing a codex or 2 a year. As they accelerated that pace in 6th edition, but they still weren't really addressing much as far as like FAQs or erratas or rebalancing. And it has been in the last 2 editions, and especially in 10th, that they've really taken an active role in that. And it definitely shows. I think they make some mistakes when rebalancing, yes. But they're also using it to address some of those issues with Codex Quality, which again leans into the argument of digital rule distribution. But we have that horse has been flogged and flayed at this point. Night Lords would be proud of what we've done to that horse. And our other submitters, A's and B's across the board, averaging out to about a B+. So we averaged out to a B. So could they do things better to address these like spike issues right around a balance release? Sure, they absolutely should, but on the whole, they're doing a pretty decent job. And then finally, narrative support. How well is GW supporting narrative play, both with events and product? And again, we have a 50-50 split here, and I think it is interesting that the 2 people who play narrative the most, Dennis and Kevin, you both gave it A's, and Richard and we both gave it B pluses, which is still pretty good. Dennis and Kevin, why the perfect score?
The grand narrative is awesome and everyone should go.
Grand narrative is wonderful and everyone should go. No,
oh God, they're
pretty much. No, I mean, if GW runs an event, even like the narrative at Dallas or Tacoma, they're fun times. There's a good story that goes on. And I think by them doing this and showing that it's possible, I'm hearing more smaller narrative like happening at tournament events where there'll be a smaller like narrative thing pop up that you didn't hear about in previous years. So I think by highlighting the narratives, especially like the grand narrative, they're kind of elevating that and people are saying, oh, there's more ways to play, and people are finding it and they're enjoying it. And also another thing I've heard people complain about tournament play is all these fixed terrains. They just look like boxes, and then people see like narrative tables like, oh wow, these are like creative and fun. And so I think it gets back to kind of when we started playing, where we would kind of make our own tables. And then after we had the table, we'd play the mission, as opposed to, okay, let's get the mission out. Okay, let's set up the train so everyone's like balanced on the mission. And so I don't know. And as for you said product, I mean, they've got the Crusade rules, which are fine. I think we've talked about the problems of that in the past, but I think I'm putting it over the top because of the way that the events they sponsor are allowing the community to see there's more than just competitive out there, and we're starting to see more narrative or casual events happen.
Yep. No, I would completely agree with that. I mean, the fact that they have been releasing several narrative books, Camp Crusade books over the last year, like proves that they're supporting this. The attention that the grand narrative is getting, on the community website and through the community support has helped. I think a little bit of like the narrative, the change in narrative as well is because of, Horus Heresy's gotten more popular. There's more plastic kits, and I think more people, that one's always been a more narrative style of play. And I think that being more popular has also probably like bled over into 40K and like, oh, well, can I do this type of play with my 40K army? And I think you're starting to see more of that pop up in the community. And like I said, I think it's just because there's some genuine excitement on GW's side to run these events, to promote this style of play. And that's, for me, it comes down to the people like, Chris and Zach and some of the other people that have been running these events on the GW side. And I think that bleeds over into the community. So yeah, that's why I gave it that score.
Okay. I gave it a B plus, and I wanted to try to separate my personal feelings on Crusade away from this. I am not a fan of Crusade. I have tried it. I have played in a couple of different Crusade leagues, and I am not a fan. It feels like a lot of extra bookkeeping and busy work, and I feel it's also too swingy. I never feel like you either have an army that progresses really well or stalls out because it just keeps getting battle scars.
Yeah, I mean, like Rob, that. Same here. This is why our Dallas group stopped playing Crusade, because
right. And I find, and I feel like the Crusade rules in the various armies are not built equally. But I cannot fault Games Workshop for at least supporting, just because I don't like that particular style of narrative play. I cannot fault their support for narrative play. The fact that they are highlighting narrative events, they are actively encouraging it. The fact that they are releasing Crusade books with mission structures that feel more playable than the older narrative books they used to do.
I'll agree with that.
I cannot fault them on that. Could they do them more often, especially now that we are seeing similar books being done for Horus Heresy 3.0, that like soft cover little micro mini campaign books? Yes, I think there's more they could do. I would like to see more things that are maybe not tied to a particular campaign, but more along the lines of some of the more generic stuff they had in the past, like City Fight or Urban Conquest or Planet Strike. And granted, those were not perfect products either, but I feel like they were more easily adaptable to your own local narrative, like whatever you wanted to do. And I do think that's where we when we reviewed Crusade Armageddon, we liked what they were doing, but we also admitted like it's really hard to like all the pieces do layer and you can pull the pieces out, but it does feel like they are intended to be layered. Like it is, you mentioned that earlier, talking about you had to peel out all the Pariah Nexus specific bits to use Pariah Nexus missions and things like that. It's like, it is harder to apply those to a mission if you don't want to play in that particular setting. I do think the bunker missions go a long way towards giving you thematic missions that you can use yourself, which is why I think having a collection of those and maybe a simple a book on outside of the core book on how to run different styles of narrative campaigns, have a chapter on doing map campaigns, have a chapter on doing tree campaigns, you know, have a section on doing Crusade and have the generic Crusade rules reprinted in there as well. I think you could even like, hey, we're going to reprint like an updated version of Leviathan and of the Leviathan Crusade rules as an example in that book. You know, this is one we're not actively promoting, but we're going to put it in as an example. I think there's things they could do more of that would be more applicable to more groups, but I can't fault them for doing more than they've ever done before, more consistently. So like they've had narrative books before, but they never felt like they were really meant to be played as a campaign. They generally didn't have very solid campaign systems and structures in there, and they do now. So that's why I gave it a B+. More effort is being expended, and it's still better. Even if I don't like Crusade, it's still better than anything they've done in the past.
Although, Rob, you made me think of something.
What's
I would love to see them actually support Crusade rules in their app.
Yes.
Yes. And again, shout out to Goonhammer for their Administratum app, which does give you a way to manage a Crusade League in an app. And basically it's a website app, so you don't even have to download an app. It's just, I think to get the most out of it, you have to be
Patreon
like
member.
a $5 member of their Patreon. Yeah. But and they've put out some good apps. They recently announced that updates to their tabletop battles app that if you're a Patreon supporter, you'll be able to have tracking in there for things like yield points for Votann or other point-based systems like Power for Pain for Drukhari, or tracking which doctrines you've used for like Gladius Detachment, Space Marines, things like that. So there's some really cool stuff there. I do recommend checking out their apps, even if you do get nothing else out of Goonhammer. And they're a fantastic site that covers a ton of gaming. Their apps for 40K are phenomenal. We use them all the time, even when we're playing narrative, just for easy tracking like command points and victory points. And then you can like get the history of the game at the end. It's really nice. For our listeners and other submitters, scores not quite as high as ours. It averaged out to a B-. We had one D-, but we had a couple of A's. So narrative play is seen as decently supported, but not maybe as well supported as it could be. So I would say overall, we tended towards B's and C's with 2 or 3 A's. Our listeners were mostly B's and C's with more B+. So I'd say in the average, we probably would give it overall a B to a B+, and our listeners would pretty much, and other submitters would probably be a B overall for where the edition is right now. Which I feel accurate with that. That seems pretty close. Like good, but could be better. Yeah. Always could be better.
No, I feel like the game's in a good spot, but there's definitely areas that need to be focused on and tweaked. And I'm not ready to say they need to do like a full like new edition launch or anything, but I know it's probably also going to happen. So
I'm hoping this is 11th is just going to be tweaks.
Sure,
we'll see.
But
yeah, I do think the edition goes well. There are some issues. We've called out the issues. So all in all, I think it's in a decent place.
All right, so I do have 3 bits of extra commentary that some of my local players provided. So we're going to start off. This is from Derek. Derek is an Emperor's Children and Chaos Knights player who also plays Age of Sigmar. So that will, and actually a couple of these people also play Age of Sigmar. So this will kind of inform their decisions a bit. So Derek says, I think overall, 10th edition has been significantly more accessible than 9th. A lot of stuff is better, and I'm excited to see how it could be improved on in 11th. Not having 1,000 strats is nice. Agreed. Yes. Oh boy. I feel like we made good narrative stuff, but narrative feels ignored by GW. And I think he's looking at it more similar to the kind of the toolbox idea that I was talking about, of having things that can be applied more easily. That last part is personal because my kids are young, but getting games done on time and within a time limit remains one of the biggest struggles. Battle Shock never seemed to work quite right. He misses the psychic phase. But 1,000 times easier to teach. Combat Patrol format was a brilliant entry point. The new app is light years from the old one. No more weapon points makes list building way simpler, and building isn't as stressful. Leaders becoming a part of the unit is way better than Look Out, Sir. I'm upset it isn't in Age of Sigmar. Which it's not. So Derek is somebody who came in at 9th edition and sees 10th edition as a huge improvement, but definitely sees some things that he wishes could be done better, and also sees the game not being as fast as it could be. Then we've got Bryant, who plays orcs and leads a Votann, and he followed up, said, he said, I agree with Derek on accessibility. Leader, Bodyguard, and Lone Op did a lot to simplify Look Out, Sir, and its rulings to fairly straightforward limitations. Hoping Melee could be streamlined a bit more. Lots of weird interactions there. Teaching my friend a Combat Patrol game was more about you probably shouldn't do that rather than you cannot do that. He was able to understand the flow of battle by the end of the match. Codices and internal faction balance continue to disappoint me. Codices still feel bad to buy when army and detachment rules need updating almost immediately.
Yeah.
Confirmed, yes. Some datasheets and detachments were DOA and maybe got a points placebo change, i.e. orc buggies. Biggest praise is the game feels fluid and good to play. Interactions rarely get complex because the rules are leaner than previous editions, so the back and forth above the table is easier to follow. It's a lot clearer when mistakes are made or what someone intended. Biggest complaint is the move to have detachments fixate on keywords. Detachments offer a chance for units to shine through detachment rules, enhancements, and stratagems. 9th edition provided general archetypes to follow that mostly benefited every model in the range, and 10th edition isolates buffs to a small subset. Example, bikes and buggies get no benefit for being in the orc shooty detachments. Walkers and infantry get no benefit from being in the fast detachment. Feels like a cynical push to encourage deeper, specific collections of an army rather than enjoying a splash of flavor towards a playstyle. I ended up playing Warhorde most of 10th edition with my orcs because I could use my whole collection and had flexibility to choose what to bring, and GW beating every other detachment with a Thunderhammer. It was fun to play Dread Mob, but unnecessarily limiting on what units feel good. And I think that is a fair critique of one of the downsides of the way GW is doing detachments, is that there's a lot of the more specialized detachments. We've even mentioned when reviewed, it's like you get no benefit for your other stuff. I do think the Votann,
no, it's the same.
Hernkin but even the Hernkin and Chthonian Berserk detachments, we pointed out when we were looking at the stratagems, they were often better for the Berserks or better for Hernkin, but they had mechanics where they would still work for other units. Like the Hernkin was like, hey, if you assailed the unit,
or we're Hernkin,
or we're Hernkin. So it's like, it's better if you're Hernkin, but there was still a mechanic to use it if you were playing the way the detachment wanted you to play with your other units. So I think there's definitely spaces where they have improved upon that, but there's also definitely cases where you feel like this doesn't work for anything else.
If you're even that, getting the lesser effect just kind of feels like, okay, well, here you get a lesser effect. So people want to lean in on that because you're running the detachment like the Hernkin one because you want to use those units and have them shine better than they will in the generic detachment. And just like the transport one, well, yeah, my pioneers get no benefit from being in that one, but they can still play a role as a support for that attachment. Or you could say, well, they don't lean into this role because they're not an infantry unit that stands by a transport. Or the Steelkin detachment, where if you're pretty much not a Steelkin, well, go away. So they still have those, but there's to highlight and enhance other units that might not get as much benefit or draw as others would. So I still like having those specialized detachments because I also know that we've seen in the past where you have more open style and just give different styles of buffs. That's led to players finding some broken things. So by limiting them down, you kind of limit that.
Yeah, I'd say Space Marine Codex is probably the biggest offender there.
Yep.
Yeah. And then finally from Josh, who plays, I think, exclusively Necrons. I do want to add 2 things here as commentary. One, regarding the question for how well the game streamlined rules, I generally agree with everyone else that they succeeded here. However, it makes the areas that aren't clear really stand out as needing attention. I'm mostly thinking of the small nitty-gritty details of the charge and fight phases. When one of the big tournament organizers has to release a 12-page document clarifying the process for charging through and around buildings, it's not well explained. And that is a fair critique. That there are some rules interactions that do get a little bit weird, and I think that's also one of the reasons why they had to introduce, like, the
weird that you can
rules.
charge through a building, because if you can't see the models on the other side, how do you know they're there to charge?
Because it's a space game with space tech.
Okay.
See, the
satellite told you.
See, that's why I just run infantry assault list, because I can charge through anything, and you don't get the weird rules interactions.
But breaking through the building, to my mind, is a weird interaction.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I've played mostly exclusively melee armies, so I've just figured out all of the rules interactions.
Well, I think it might have been 7th, but there was one where you could only charge a unit if you could see it.
Yes, I think that was.
And that's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
So
no, that hasn't been a thing for like 3 editions now. And then his point number 2, the way rules are organized is unnecessarily convoluted and confusing. In order to play a game, you need to know the rules from at least 6 different sources. You have the core rules, the commentary to the core rules, the Tournament Companion, which might also override the rules you've already learned, your Factions Codex, the commentary FAQ to your Factions Codex, and then the field manual so you know what your stuff is worth. And if you play at an organized level, then you need their rules too, but you're asking for it at that point. My point is that it's a lot to keep track of, assuming you even know about it at all, which is not guaranteed. And that's not even beginning with the chaos and havoc that is a rebalance update. I strongly feel this needs to be better laid out so that it's less impenetrable. And that is all a fair critique. Right there.
Sure. I mean, core rules, balanced data slate, the dev commentary. I wish the 3 of those could be combined. I know why they can't.
Well, and like when we talked about the chapter approved deck, the mission deck for match play, there's a document for that also has errata for the deck you just bought that came out like right. It's like, oh yeah, this mission, don't play it this way. It's like, or this secondary objective, don't play it this way. But you printed it that way. You put it that way. Well, that would don't play that one that way. And God, at least they did unify the movement rules, but remember when they first dropped movement, it's like, okay, movement works like this, unless you're playing at a tournament, and then it works like this. Yeah, all of this needs to be consolidated down, and even searching through the app, because they will have, like, if you search for a particular rule, like, hey, disembarking from a transport, or something like that, you will get entries for the rule in the core rules, the rule in the dev commentary, and they will be different entries.
Yeah.
So if you click on the wrong one, you don't get the full context. Like if you click on the one from just the core rules, you'll get one answer. And then you click on the one from the dev commentary. And also the balance data slate is not included in the app rules.
Right. They need to get the balance there and combine all 3. That's my opinion.
I will not officially condone like piracy or using some of these websites because, GW does send us stuff. So, but I will say this, like they should hire the people that run the Wahapedia site to like organize their rules because that website's fantastic. Like everything is laid out. You click on a unit, you see all of the different stratagems that apply to that unit. The FAQ stuff pops up, it's all laid out. Like if you click on a unit or you click on a detachment, it's all there. Everything's linked. Like that is, in my opinion, that's the model they should be doing. Of like, you go in, you click on something, and then you immediately see everything that's related to it, and you see the most updated version of it.
I will say that a lot of people in our Dallas group do use Wahapedia.
Yeah. Of course they do, because it's great. Like, and it's much better laid out than, any of the GW stuff, and it's less confusing. But like, it's one of those things where like it sucks because, I don't want to necessarily encourage people to use, sites that are unofficial and stuff. But yeah, also like I don't like telling people to go buy a $60 book and then download a bunch of PDFs and then pay a subscription for an app just to get the exact same thing you can get on this website. So
it's a fantastically arranged website, and the fact that they've even done like all the font styling and everything, so it's consistent. You look at this and you're like, okay, yeah, this is the same way it's laid out in my codex, so it's immediately a familiar layout, and it just clicks
like
in your
GW's
mind. And yeah,
GW's done that before, where they've just bought like tools that are competing with them. Like, they should just incorporate these people and hire them to do it officially, because they're probably not going to do it better than what they do.
No. And also, like, for example, I mentioned, Gene Stealer cults. The fact that those army rules got updated. So if you go to Gene Stealer cults and then you go to the army rule for cult ambush, it's got the most recent version of that, and it links all the units and what they cost. And if you click on one of those, it has the rules for that unit, and it has the little part where you can mouse over and get the fluff for it, and a link where it's like, hey, search for this model's image on the internet. If Games Workshop had this, you could have this, click here and it'll take you right to the page to buy this unit.
True.
And see all the images. Yeah, it's like they could easily bring something like this in-house. And I would even say, okay, Games Workshop wants to make money, Warhammer Plus.
Yeah.
Lock this behind a Warhammer Plus subscription and you will get so many people subscribing just to have access to all the rules this way.
Yeah, I don't mind people. Like, I don't think people mind paying for certain stuff, but like, make it usable. Like, because the current app isn't what the part of the reason why people complain about it is because you have to pay for the app, you have to do all these extra steps, and then it's like not even well laid out, so like it's not even easy to use.
It's been shown that it can be done, and that it can be done by people who are just doing it on the side. Like, this isn't even their job. And yet, Games Workshop could absolutely do this, and we strongly encourage them to do something along that. And as we said, it's like, hey, if you don't want to give it away for free, fine, you have income streams. Find ways to encourage people to buy into it. There's ways it can be done, and that's the biggest flaw of this edition is still rules accessibility.
Yep.
Rules accessibility is the biggest problem. It's that, and like, model pricing is model pricing. I understand that they're going to do what they're going to do, but those are the two biggest hurdles to accessibility: is the cost of models and the ease of access to the rules. As we have seen from players who have started this edition or started last edition and switched over to 10th, this is an easy to play, well enjoyed edition. Most people who play this edition see, especially if this is their first edition or their second edition, they really enjoy it. It is a good, easy game to play. Is it as fast as it could be? Maybe not. That there's things that they can do to adjust that too. But like, the biggest problems with this game is getting new players across the threshold and then making the rules accessible to everyone. Fix those two issues right there. Yes, you will probably still have issues with codex quality from time to time. You will have balance issues. People make mistakes when designing things, or, could they spend more time play testing this? Maybe, but the game moves fast enough at this point that anything that they commit to print, which is also an argument to be made for digital rules distribution, is going to be out of date by the time it hits stores. So fix those things. Fix those two things, and this is still probably the best edition of the game. Are there things we don't like about it? Sure. There are things we miss from older editions? Sure. We've talked about that on multiple episodes. But is that I have played more of this than I have any other edition of the game. And I have enjoyed the vast, vast majority of it. And I like most of what they're doing. Fix those two things, and this is a golden edition. And it could be a living edition that wouldn't necessitate an entire 11th edition. If you could make this a living game with a regularly updated digital rule set, they could be set for life, just selling people models. But anyway, I say that is our grade for 2025, August 2025. That's our grade for Warhammer 40k 10th edition, a solid B product. Which seems like we're damning it with faint praise, but we do really enjoy this game. We wouldn't have been doing this show for this long if we had.
I mean, I'm doing this. I'm doing the show just for the money.
What money?
Right.
Oh, you mean to spend money?
You do realize I was gonna say, you do realize you don't get paid, right?
Shoot. I thought I was counting on all that back pay. I figured there was just a glitch in payroll and I was going to get all that back pay at once.
No, we've moved your office down to the basement. And if you could take care of the rats for us,
do I at least get to keep my stapler?
No, I took the red stapler.
But the red one goes
he's
faster.
going to burn the building down.
Oh, that's right. I should give it to Richard because he's our orc player.
Yes, there you go. But anyway, that is it. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with a new episode. But until then, from all of us here at Preferred Enemies, I'm your host, Rob.
Kevin.
Dennis.
And Richard.
Good night, good gaming, and GW, keep working. Get those grades up.